Thank you for joining this conversation on the occasion of the virtual premiere of Funny Boy, directed by Deepa Mehta, written by Deepa Mehta and Shyam Selvadurai, who wrote the novel that the film is based upon. I'm just going to give you a couple of bios before we start. Deepa Mehta is an Oscar-nominated filmmaker. Her award-winning films have played at every major film festival and have been sold and distributed across the globe. Her films include the Elemental trilogy, Earth, Fire, and Water. And if you haven't seen them, shame on you, you have to go see those. The final film, which received an Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. She also directed Midnight's Children, based upon Salman Rushdie's Booker Prize-winning novel. Her work challenges traditions and stereotypes and is always daring, fearless, and provocative. Funny Boy author Shyam Selvadurai was born in Colombo, Sri Lanka. He came to Canada with his family at the age of 19 and now lives in Toronto. Funny Boy, his first novel, was a national bestseller. It also won the W.H. Smith Books in Canada First Novel Award and in the U.S. the Lambda Literary Award. Welcome, both of you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For having us.
So I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed the film, and such an uplifting story, but also talks about so many important things in our world that we're dealing with today, even though the novel was written 26 years ago. Is that correct? And you, Shyam, have been trying to get the movie made for a while, and you said that there were lots of scripts written and they never seemed right. So you took a shot at it and then you sent it to Deepa, and that began your collaboration. Am I right on that process?
Yes, you're absolutely right on that process. That's exactly how it went.
And why do you think that people weren't able to get this story right? I mean, a lot of times novelists don't want to be screenwriters or don't have that, piece of the brain that goes different ways. And, just, is it, it needed your voice, or?
I think that, I mean, I was always surprised that people wanted to make adapt it, because to me it had a fundamental problem in it, which is it's episodic. It's actually it's actually linked stories. And what holds the novel together is this consciousness of Arjie and his narrative voice. And once you remove that, as you have to in film, you're left with these disparate elements. So I'd seen the screenplays, and I'd also seen that the screenplays were too violent. They went too much for the violence and lost the personal story. So, it's my novel. I mean, it's your own work. Mm-hmm. It's easy to kind of destroy it because it's nothing sacred about it for me. Right. So I sort of dashed it on the ground, picked up the necessary pieces, and tried to really just go for Arjie's story. And then when I sent it to my agent, I just sent it on a lark. I thought he'd say, get back to that novel. But he said, oh, this is quite good, actually. And then he asked who I wanted. And of course, I only wanted Deepa. Because her queer politics are fantastic, as we saw with Fire. And I'd seen that in this film, Earth. She has that ability to work the political and the personal, the epic and the sort of family unit. And she's really very good at that. So I asked her if she would look at it, and she said yes. And then she said she was interested, but she had a big change she wanted. So we had to meet. And I was like, oh God, what is this?
What was the big change?
She said to me, Shyam, you have gone too far from the novel. You need to get much closer to it. Wow. So, I mean, that's how can you go wrong after that point?
And Deepa, I heard that the script was 200 some odd pages, the first.
Yeah, it was about 180 or 200 pages.
180, yeah.
Okay. That's about a 4-hour movie. Sorry. That's about. So tell me how your collaboration began, and what was the collaboration like?
Well, for me, I don't know. I just had such a great time with Shyam, because I think it's his story, and not for a minute did he make me feel that because it was his story that I could not be critical of it. Mm-hmm. So the generosity with which we shared the journey together was amazing, because once that ego is gone, we could actually collaborate and think of it as something outside Sham, outside myself, but in Arjie's world.
Right.
And once we went there and followed that road, for me it was really easy. I mean,
Mhm.
we had some good laughs, and I'd sometimes I'd suggest things that would make Sham would say, "Oh no, don't." Then he say, "You're right," And it was like very brief. They weren't huge, long conversations. He got it, and when he spoke, I got it.
Mhm.
So I mean, I feel now that we were very lucky. We really
Mhm.
were.
That's nice. That's really nice. I have to say, I've talked to a lot of book writers, screenwriters, and then directors, and they don't always have the love because sometimes it's a difficult, give and take.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Melissa, I think if you're going to be a screenwriter, you have to accept that the primary artist is the director. And for me, that was clear from the start. And I really trusted Deepa about this. So I felt like I was working the screenplay to her vision.
Mm,
And so it was, as she said, once you leave your ego behind, then it's really easy to focus on the project and get on with it and actually then go back and forth on it so many times. And, I think just Deepa was very sweet. Even when she went to Sri Lanka, she would sort of send me the drafts to look at it, and I would be like, "Okay, yes, it's fantastic," because I just want her to make the film. I didn't want to. I thought I'd just get my voice and my face out of her mind. Let her just make the film.
And how
Um,
long did it take you guys to work on the script to get it to a place where you were like, I'm ready to take it to financiers and
It took about a year, I think. Was it a year or less? Maybe
no,
less. I don't know, Sham.
Deepa, we got that first funding very fast. Now we started in about June. By about October, I think we had the first funding. And then
wow.
it took a long time to get the rest. Remember, my God.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was that was tough. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I think the first bit maybe came around about 3 or 4 months later.
CBC, yeah,
He
Yes,
came
that
in.
was that was the first in. I
yeah.
mean, that's always interesting to talk to people who are not US based and how it is about government funding and support of the arts that allows people to continue to develop these works because you can actually eat and, pay your rent and mortgage without worrying. Because you know that you can develop properly.
But I think, Melissa, it's more than that. I mean, I think for us, it was. I mean, let's face it. You go to a financier and you go with a book that's a beloved book in Canada, but then you say, okay, I want to make it, and they say, who's the star?
Mhm.
And that's the first question.
Yeah,
And first of all, everybody's brown, and
right.
that's the reality of it. We aren't, Brad Pitt ain't in Funny Boy, So so it's not that easy. Even
Of
in
course.
Canada, it doesn't even have. First of all, it doesn't have it it doesn't have any white Canadians, and it's not set in Canada,
Right.
and it's set in Sri Lanka, and
Mhm.
they know all of that. And that's, I think, David was really good with that, and that's our producer,
Mhm.
and we went for a few meetings, and it's the fact that it's a beloved book really helped. The
Right.
fact that I think I had made films outside Canada, which were either in o- two of them were in Hindi, in fact.
If you both had to describe a log line for the finished film or kind of like what you want people to feel when they watch it, what would that be?
You go first, Sham.
I hate log lines.
I know.
I would say I said if there's anything that I want people to feel, it's that, well, two things. Firstly, is this idea of solidarity and love and friendship and courage across our various barriers. Are entirely possible, whether it's ethnicity or race or gender or class. That these things are possible and they're important. And the second thing is that, and this is just for North Americans, when you look around your street and you see all these people who have come from elsewhere, their lives didn't start the moment they got off the plane. They actually have these full lives that they had before and brought with them. here. And I think that that's one thing the film does. When you get to the end of the film, you've lived with that family.
Yes.
You've lived in that house. You know them. And they are the people who walk our streets in North America.
Right. Deepa, did you want to add to that?
It's similar, and as we were shooting, it was very evident to me that whatever came from the film actually came from within that family. So the family became a vehicle. And whether you're a nuclear family in North America, or whether you're an extended family in India, or whether you're not another extended family in Mexico, it that bond is one that forms us. So
Right.
for me, the film became uh, very particular that it is about this family and this young man, but because it was so particular, I think it became a very universal story. So for me, yes, it's a very particular story about Sri Lanka, and yes, it's a very particular story about love. But because it's that, it's a universal story.
Absolutely. And the title, Funny Boy, is that a term that was you were called? Is that common or
Well, that was
not
a
anymore?
well, that was a polite term.
Right.
What I was called. I wish people. I know it was just that it was that way you said in polite society. Mr. So and so's or Mrs. So and so's son is funny.
And I mean, we can take back these words, right? And take away the negativity of them and use them to empower ourselves when we're the ones using them. And I think that's when you put that title in there, give the power to the person who has dealt with those issues versus the people who call you funny or whatever. And okay, so let's talk a little bit about the structure of the film, because as you said, it was 6 episodic pieces, and then it's a variety of years, and so I wanted to get a sense, Deepa, in terms of your filmmaking structure. I mean, you had 2 different Arjies, but how are you accomplished to able such a wide scope of storytelling in such a seamless way?
Well, thank you for calling it seamless. But uh, I, when I think about the way I did it, I mean, we tried to do it as sequentially as possible. So we did all the young Arjie first, and then we got into the older Arjie. And the focus was always Arjie. And it was he drove the story. Once you knew who was driving the story, it was very easy to navigate where you wanted to go with it and where you wanted to end up. So in my head, even when we were doing rehearsals, I knew when we were working with a young RG and we'd be working with the people around young RG, and you could see the dynamics happening right in front of you, how family members influence each other, or as Shyam said, what it's like to say, oh, he's funny, or he's just creative. The mother, the desire of the mother just to for her son to be fine. You could feel the love from that actress. You could feel not the disapproval, but but the desire that to protect the son from the father, and the kids and the brothers and sisters. But the minute we got into the unit, I thought it became a cinch, which was very surprising to all of us. But to follow Archie, it was like following a lotus in a river. You just sort of wandered with it, and it blossomed, and then it closed, and then it blossomed again. It was a journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot to do with Sham's book.
I'm going to read it. I'm sorry I haven't read it previously, but now I'm looking forward to it. And I think we had the coming out story, and you have the politics, and those are just 2 monumental pieces. And they're happening at the same time, and the trains are both moving. And so it's like, how were you able to? I mean, they're both political issues, right? So, but personal. So how are you able to navigate those 2 kind of just monstrous pieces that we're dealing with RG's story?
I think Deepa is sort of sorry. Go ahead, Deepa. It's
No?
you.
For me, I didn't think that there were huge issues. Maybe that's why.
Mm,
Perhaps I didn't think, oh my God, I'm terrified. I'm going to be. I really I enjoy doing crowd scenes because I
mhm,
find them and I've dealt. I mean, I've done many violent crowd scenes, and I find them. I find it's like a math problem, and I'm not very good at math. So it's you really have to be sort of creative to try and figure out where you're going to place somebody else. And but the point is, what is the emotional core of that scene? So it's not just violence for the sake of violence. It isn't a crowd scene for the sake of a crowd scene. When they desecrate the house, I wanted to feel that they're desecrating a family.
mhm,
So the emotional core of every crowd scene or every scene of violence had to be an emotional one.
mhm,
Without that, it becomes a spectacle. So for me, it was therefore it wasn't very difficult because I knew what the emotional center of the scene was
mhm,
always.
mhm. We watch movies now that were shot in, we call the before times, with, crowds and people talking to each other and intimacy. And you just kind of like, I don't know if you guys have been watching things and being like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get back to that? And I think it might take a while. And I don't know, Deepa, if you've been working during this time, but thinking about, what is the creative process going to look like with in COVID times, and is it something that is going to affect storytelling in a profound way?
I think it's going to affect everything
Everything,
profound way. It's not just storytelling, it's how we look at each other, uh, what our uh, what our social norms are,
right?
what how do we love? How do we show love? How do we show hatred? Is it always going to be through this? Or is it will we ever be able to touch anybody? So I think our whole concept is going to change about everything.
Yeah.
Reading, teaching, interacting, but the core, what worries me more than just films is that is it going to uh, is it going to affect our core values or morality?
Yeah.
That 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 scares me a bit.
And Shyam, as a novelist, and how are you thinking about your creativity in this time? I believe you have a book coming out, and was it written prior to
Uh,
COVID?
it was written prior to COVID, and I am actually working on it now. So I couldn't have done the research if I had to, because it's set in India. It's about the Buddha's wife. And but Melissa, I kind of wonder about that from a novelist point of view. I mean, it's interesting that when you look at the Spanish flu and you think of all the great novelists who were alive at that time, and not a single one of them wrote about it.
Mm,
Um, and I just wonder if it
Yeah.
might be the same. It'll just be a bloody nuisance that everybody was glad was over, or will it be something else? Now, the Spanish flu came straight on top of World War One,
World
which
War One.
produced so much literature, so much amazing literature. So, from a novelist's point of view, I'm not quite sure
Mm,
what it'll change or not change, because novels take long times, like a
right.
long period to write, right?
Very interesting. And was there anything that was in the book that you weren't able to fit into the movie that you kind of were just like, oh no? Or did you get most all everything in? Oh, that's
I
great.
mean, yeah, I mean, like, I was so, the thing is, as Deepa said, once you got the focus on Arjie and you're going forward with this thing, all those things that you like in the novel, or I liked in the novel, I was quite happy to get rid of for the artistic purity of having that arc. So I was
Hmm.
very happy to actually drop stuff from it.
And this is a beloved book in Canada, and it's 26 years old now. And so talk about, like, do you get young people coming up to you and saying, how much the book means to them? Still, coming out is still so profound for most people. Talk about, the 25 years of resonance of your work.
Well, I mean, I just continue. I mean, I don't know. I'm just always surprised that people still like the book and identify with it, especially young people. But yeah, I mean, not just here, but also in Toronto, but a lot in Sri Lanka, young people come up to me and say how much the book meant to them, or they sort of whisper, "Your book changed my life." And then they give you that look, like, that they're young and queer and they want you to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them call me uncle, which makes me
Mm.
die. I'm so old to them now. Some of them ask for selfies. I think it's just, I don't know why it still resonates. I mean, there's been so much literature out there now, queer literature, but it seems to somehow,
The
I don't
personal
know.
is the universal.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of different things going on in the film, but so much joy within the family. Um, and it's funny. It's a really funny movie too. And I mean, young Arjie is hysterical because he's just himself, and he doesn't put the filters on himself until other people put the filters on him, which is the issue that we all deal with. So, is there a moment or a scene in the film that you both love particularly?
Wow.
I mean, this, I don't know, Shams, what comes to mind is something which has no dialogue, but I feel it has, there are two of them that feels like the essence of the film for me. And one is uh, the two young boys when they're in love,
Hmm.
and they dance to Every Breath I Take. And it's about innocence, it's about love, it's about purity.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of space around them. And they're so together. And then you realize that, oh my God, of course it's a love story. And for me, that is a beautiful moment because it is the epitome of me of the novel,
Hmm.
and and their love. And the other one was very meaningful was when the mother comes and she's really disappointed with her husband not doing anything or not really taking a stand against the government for
Right.
for Jagan, who is their lodger and a family friend, and they do it in complete silence. And but in that silence, you know that this relationship is going to be in real trouble. But yet you realize that she has come as a woman. It was very important for me because the awakening of a housewife into somebody who's become has a political identity is so strong in the performance of Nimi. And the disappointment of Ali, the father, is you can just see it in a gesture. He just sits down. So there are no grand moments or anything, but it's very quiet. So those two scenes come to mind as you asked the question,
Hmm.
Melissa. I haven't thought about them till you asked me. I don't know.
Did you
But
want to
for
add
me,
anything?
it's I mean, it's a really small things. It's like when that mother's had the a conversation with Jagan upstairs in his room, and she's coming down and she pauses to sort of pick the flowers off the apart. I mean, it's so amazingly kind of real. Like you've had this intense conversation, and then you have this mundane thing, and it makes it feel very real. And then there's this really chilling moment, which I think sort of resonated a lot with me, where the family is trying to, is dispersing to the neighbors. And then there's this moment when you see the shot of the staircase and the foyer underneath it, and it's just there and it's empty. And the first time I saw that, it sort of brought back memories of leaving our house. That sense where you turn, you look, and you think, will I ever see this again?
Right.
Will I ever see this? And suddenly it's beloved, right? Because now you just live in a house, whatever, and suddenly it's just this beloved space that you suddenly realize is beloved, and you just don't know if you'll ever see it again. So I think it's just somehow just that frame rang with me in a way that just I don't know. It's amazing that it did that. I mean, I've worked on the film with Deepa. I should have no emotional connection with the film because I've been so much in it. But every time I see it, I just get so emotionally drawn into it, and every time I see it, there's something else that I love about it.
Right.
Uh, and yeah.
You were talking about your mother and your brother before going to the mall. Have they seen it? Have they talked to you about it?
Yes, they
What
they
is your
all saw
family?
it, and then we had a Zoom after party discussion about it. They just loved it,
Oh.
and my father was thrilled that Ali was so handsome. So my mother kept saying, "But you're as handsome, you're as handsome." It's so
Oh,
sweet, and I think that for my nieces and nephews, even though they'd been to Sri Lanka so many times, even though they knew what had happened, the film was like, "What?
Right.
This is what happened to our parents." And I think that's the reaction I've seen across sort of Tamils who have seen this movie. This second, I like people who are my age and their children have turned to them and gone, what?
No.
And then for us, for my brother, for example, he evidently, according to my niece, he started to cry at a moment in the movie, and my sister cried all the way through. She had to watch it again because she was crying so much. But I think it's this sense, and what they're crying about is that, when you're traumatized, you go silent, right? Like and the first way out of trauma is to tell your story. And this is like the story, the story is now out there, and um, I think that's really, that was their reaction. And then I talked to so many other Sri Lankan people and got so many emails. And I think that seemed to sort of be the universal reaction. I suspect it'll be the same in, the US and the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You as you were talking, sorry, Melissa.
Sure, go.
We're talking about, I remember this beautiful quote that I read. It was about the time I think I read your book also. It's a quote from James Baldwin, and he says something about. He says that perhaps the reason why people hang on to hate for so long and so stubbornly is because they know that the moment they will let go of it, they will feel the pain.
Right.
And I thought, of course, because the minute you feel the pain is the minute you start the healing.
Right.
And and the history and the turmoil that Sri Lanka has been through, perhaps what you were trying to do, and I think you want to do, Sham, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, we've talked about it, is that build that bridge, as you said, of solidarity, the hatred everywhere in the world. It's not just in Sri Lanka, but because it's a Sri Lankan story. Uh, I'm saying that the hatred has to go,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to let go of it, and we will feel the pain. And
Right.
but and unless we feel the pain, there's no chance of a healing to start.
And I think in this country, especially, like the pain, people are still really holding on, which is why, in
Yes.
some way, I'm thinking that COVID might be that springboard into what is next, and maybe people will use the COVID times as pointing to us to the future. Um, and I want to talk a little bit about
Or
the
maybe
future.
the exit of Trump, which,
Well,
that
absolutely. But, people are in pain. They don't really have the tools to understand how things are changing. Their whole floor is shaking. And if you're not prepared intellectually and emotionally for the fact that our country has shifted and is continuing to shift to
Yep.
white minority world, and how that is not going to ruin your life and actually make it better and stronger and more interesting and more diverse and all those kinds of things that those of us who are excited about the future, that they've been brainwashed, that this is what they've been
Mhm.
taught. And so I think your film also talks about, like the stuff that people just get pushed into them, and they don't even process it as individuals because it becomes just who the people are and the times that they're living in. So your film feels so resonant right now. So that's why I'm excited for people to see it. But I wanted
Yeah,
to.
yeah. I find that too. I mean, I think that I first read it, like I said, about 26 years ago, 25 years ago, and I loved it. And of course, I rang up Sham's agent immediately, and they said, "Sorry, it's gone. Somebody
Oh.
optioned it already." But this time, when I read it again, which was 3 years ago, I felt that the resonance was completely different,
Hmm, what
and
do you feel?
I loved it then, and I loved it. I loved it now, not more, but I found that it really spoke of the times
Hmm.
that we find ourselves in. I'm not just talking about Sri Lanka, because then it is what Banuel said, it is particular, and then the minute it is that, it becomes universal. But it resonates with Turkey, with India, with with the human beings. I think that's what it is. And suddenly, for the first time, I mean, I'm an immigrant, an Indian immigrant to Canada. I said, "Oh my God, Funny Boy is about all of us being immigrants.
Right.
It's not just about whether we are white or Caucasian or black or brown. We all are trying to find our space in the world."
Yes.
and it feels, I felt at home, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean,
It's interesting.
that's what humanity has to deal with. So I want to talk a little bit about the film industry, and while there have been talks for some time about trying for inclusion, and I think thanks to the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter protests, we're really centering the importance of having inclusive stories on screen. So, and Deepa, this is something that you really speak about, and you've talked about representation through the white gaze. um, and so my question for you is, do you think that things are changing? And you've had a body of work. Are things changing now, or is this just another kind of moment that we could lose?
Uh, I think things are changing, but I'm also sometimes in my dark moments, I hope that the window won't close,
Right,
and will remain open. I mean,
right.
but that's the fear because of somebody who's been trying to keep the window open for at least for my community and for as women and
For
about other,
humanity, I mean, this
you know,
is
and you're saying then you always feel really apprehensive that please let's just this should be real. This should be for real. This should not be tokenism. This
hmm,
should really be about representation
hmm,
because representation matters. It's
hmm,
extremely important. And think how much richer our stories will be if we actually go for inclusion as
yeah.
opposed to tokenism. You know.
I keep saying that if this is not the central driving force of your work now in this industry, you are not doing your job. Um,
Mhm.
so let's talk about Ava and Array for a second before we go, because I love talking about Ava and the influence that Ray and Ava are having on all of our lives. Um, so talk a bit about how you first connected with Ava, and what's going to be the impact of having this film seen on Netflix. Thursday, I think it is. People are going to be able to watch this movie across, many territories of our world. Um, you know, tell me, both of you, what are your thoughts on how many people are going to see it immediately?
Ah,
The
I mean,
impact.
I want the world to see it every day for the rest of their lives. I mean, I'm just kidding. But to go back to Array and Ava is that uh, I felt when we met through an actor, Agam, who plays Auntie Radha, the beloved Auntie Radha
So
in the,
good.
and she just finished she'd finished Funny Boy, and she'd gone to do a pilot with Ava, with Array, and we were sitting and we became sort of like a family. It was after the fact, people actually, actors remain a family during the filming, and I'm so used to having done many films that you say, okay, you have your after party and everybody disappears into their own worlds, but this family, the Funny Boy family, always remained together. And so we were thinking and saying, okay, what should we do with the film? Does anybody even have any idea? How do you promote a small film which is about colored people, which is about coming out, which is about love, but is also about civil war? And a country that many people in North America don't even know much about, and Agam said that perhaps she'll write to Ava. So I said, that's a great idea. And maybe Ava can help get us into Sundance or something. We just talking. And before I knew it, Ava replied back, and Tilane did as well, and said that send us the film. We're very interested, and she'd seen Water and she liked it, and we
Yeah.
sent her the film, and about a week later, she said we love it. It's a gem, and we'd like to distribute it. And it was for David and myself and Sham and all of us. I mean, it was like a no-brainer. We didn't think twice about going to another distributor, going to another festival, nothing. We just said, Funny Boy's home is actually Array now.
Yeah.
It felt right.
Mm,
And to this day, I just feel we're in the right hands. It's not in good hands. There are many good hands,
mm-hmm,
but there are very few right hands.
mm-hmm.
And with Ava, I think Funny Boy is it's like it's being hugged. So
Yeah.
that's what it feels like.
And Shyam, do you want to add to that?
No, I mean, that's so perfect. I couldn't say anything more.
Mm. And before we go, let's just really kind of acknowledge the fact that this film is Canada's submission to the Academy for International Film. I mean, they've changed the name of the section now. I like it much better as international film. And this is your second time being submitted, Deepa. And so, what significance does that have in Canada and in Sri Lanka and other places where the film resonates, and for you as a filmmaker?
It's I think I couldn't believe it when Water was shortlisted and we got to walk the red carpet and we said, oh my God, we see this on TV, this isn't happening to us, kind of thing. And but the first step is always the when your country nominates you, there's something really special about that. It's about your people. I mean, I hope the world is our people, and one day it will be soon, I hope. But that when we got the news that it was Canada's submission for the Oscars, uh, I mean, I think I just jumped. I mean, and at my age, that's kind of stupid. But I felt like a kid. I just said, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So this is a real feeling of recognition by your peers is something that's huge,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes us what I hope that the world will be a family one day, and this seems to be a step towards that.
Mm-hmm. And Shyam, what does that mean for you? The novel, 26 years old, and now you know, it's going a whole new place.
Well, I mean, it's wonderful. What can you possibly say except it's wonderful? No, I just feel like it's found a new audience.
Mm-hmm.
The story and Arjie has found a new audience, and I think he's been a bit of a role model for South Asian queers in particular, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
that will hopefully expand because he's accessible. There's something about him that feels very accessible as a person, and the love affair feels very accessible. You two can have this love affair, the film says, and the book says, and I think that yeah, the Oscar choice, as you know, as sort of from Canada, it just sort of enhances that in some
Mm-hmm.
way.
Well, this will clearly be a little bit of a different season this year with us still living in COVID times. And I personally feel like I think that a lot of films will be get to see on the merits of the film versus all the event type things that are required. And I
Yeah.
do think it's going to be an amazing year for um, women directors this year, and in particular. Um, and I wish, you both best of luck. Thank you for sharing the story with all of us in the world.
In all English speaking territories.
All English speaking territories. Got it.
And it's already been, yeah, and it's on CBC in Canada,
Good.
which kept saying, yeah. So it's on December 10th. Everybody in all English speaking territories will see it. And and I want to end with something that a friend of ours, who's a wonderful writer in Toronto in Canada, said. Kamal, and he's been a big fan of the book for years. He's from Yemen, uh, a queer, wonderful, brilliant writer and a journalist and a critic and now a novelist. Said He said, for me the biggest thing was to see two brown boys in bed, and I thought, how lovely. Yeah, because we forget.
Yep.
We see white boys, we see black boys, we've never seen any brown boys, and they're so beautiful, both of them. And they're beautiful because they encompass the world.
Hmm.
There's no division, and I think that means a lot. That meant a lot to me. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing your stories. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Melissa. Thank you for your
Thank
kindness
you.
and your sympathy. Thank you.